Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing a spoiler-rific review of Mortal Kombat. Now that we've all had a chance to see it for ourselves, I want to go ahead and speak about the movie and also go over a couple of other items that we didn't speak about in the first review because obviously I didn't want to give all the spoilers away. I didn't want to ruin the movie for anybody. But I also have a couple of questions that have come in that I'd like to answer during the show today. So first and foremost, thank you everybody for coming back to the show. It's a great, the last video got a great reception. I'm really appreciative of everybody that took time to check out my review. I know I didn't give away too much information because again, I don't like to spoil movies for anybody. I want people to go out and experience them themselves. And that's why also I didn't drop this spoiler-rific review over the past weekend because I wanted people to have a chance to see the movie for themselves, not have the movie wrecked for them by me or by anybody else, giving away details of the movie itself. As I said last week, I really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was a ton of fun. I specifically said this is not the Shawshank Redemption. This movie is not going to win a ton of awards. Now that we can speak about it, there are, the dialogue in the movie is not top shelf dialogue, but it's not supposed to be top shelf dialogue. It's about people that fight karate and have superpowers and do great things, and it's an enjoyable movie. Like me and all my friends have all enjoyed the movies. We all had a good time with them. We all had the same issues with this movie. Obviously, there were some characters that that weren't in the movie that might be in future installments. There were some not plot holes, but they didn't follow exactly the story of Mortal Kombat. For those of you that are really hardcore into the video games, you know that there's a mythology and there's a lot of connectivity between the characters. In the original or in the lore for Mortal Kombat, Jax is the person that actually damages Kano and causes Kano to have the laser eye. It's not some superpower that he gains because he's chosen. But again, the movie can't be exactly the video game because if you go beat for beat by the video game, it's very hard to translate that. And as all of you know, comic movies that come from video games have not done really well, either in the box office or critically or just even the fans. Minus one or two movies that I can think about, most video game adaptations fall really hard. Like they're really not good. They try to follow the video game too closely, and that doesn't work. Like you have to adapt things. If you think about like what Marvel does with like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they take concepts that exist in comic books, but they adapt them. They make them more movie friendly. And this is what I think that the group that were making this Mortal Kombat movie did. They took a concept, the game, and they adapted it just good enough, just well enough where we can have a really enjoyable movie. I'm not going to go into a ton of gripes about the movie, but my biggest gripe about the movie is I wish there was more, obviously with Scorpion and Sub-Zero, because for me, at least this movie was set up where those two were at the core of the conflict between Earthrealm and Netherrealm. They're not. I mean, if you know the real lore, they're a faction of Mortal Kombat, but they're not at the center of Mortal Kombat, even though they are the two most recognizable characters, I think, next to maybe Liu Kang and some of the core original characters, Liu Kang and Johnny Cage and so forth. Did I enjoy the movie? Absolutely. Is it going to win any awards? No, it's not. I don't think it's going to win any awards. I don't even think it's going to win visual awards. I can tell that this movie was done on the cheap. It doesn't look cheap, which is great, but I really do think that they reined budget in on this quite a bit, because if you think about it, like Goro should have been a little bit more of a more important character, but they really only show Goro one time, and I really think it's because they didn't have enough money to like animate this giant creature for a lot of the movie and keep him really photorealistic in quality. He did look really good. I mean, compared to the original Goro, which was a puppet that I think was like manned by like 3 or 4 people inside the puppet, and I think it also had some outside handlers. they did what they could with 90s technology. Obviously, we knew that CGI back then was horrible because if you remember Reptile from the original Mortal Kombat, that CGI looked one step above Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where they just drew the character onto the film. So it didn't have any photorealistic feel to him. And again, even back then, Reptile was only in the movie for a very short time because of budgets. I mean, it's really expensive to make these kind of special effects where you have this giant character. I felt that the new character that they developed really even didn't need to exist, like Scorpion's great-great-great-grandchild really didn't need to exist. There's plenty of other characters in Mortal Kombat. I understand that they wanted to make this one character that's like the character that represents us and is kind of going along in the story, so you can understand what's happening. But I mean, you can take it or leave it. Like if you take that character out of the movie and replace him with a Mortal Kombat character that's in the regular history of Mortal Kombat, like you could easily replace that guy. He wasn't really necessary. His power set was odd. I mean, he grew like some sort of outer skin that could take a lot of punishment, absorb the punishment, and then like feed it back. It almost felt a little, I mean, obviously it's very similar to like Black Panther's suit where it absorbs energy and then it can disperse kinetic energy back out. So his power was meh. At best, it was meh. The fights, I did enjoy the fights. I do like the cinematography for the realms, but as far as when the fights actually happened, even though I enjoyed the fights, man, there was a lot of cutting. Like there was one or two fights where they let them breathe and there wasn't as much cutting, and there was other fights where there was a lot of cutting. And I just, I unfortunately, I'm spoiled. All action movies now have to live up to one of a few films that I've seen that have set the bar for action. And if any of you have seen The Raid or The Raid 2, the action in those movies, like that is next level action. Like they don't cut. When they do cut, it's just to change the angle. It's not really to like cut the fact that the actor that's acting or the actress that's acting maybe is not a great martial artist. You can see that in movies when if they do a wide shot and somebody's fighting and you see in the distance there's a henchman that's kind of like waiting instead of like jumping in. In a real fight, the henchman would just jump in, but they're waiting for their cue to jump in. And that's why sometimes they cut it so you don't see like that person waiting just barely off screen to jump in to the action. This film definitely had a lot of cuts in some areas where I would not have put cuts. I would have let the fight breathe a little bit more. I would have done a little bit more wide shots, like really let the choreography of the fight speak for itself. With that said, I really enjoyed all the fatalities. It felt like all the fights were just there to build up to a fatality. All the fatalities were pretty cool. Kano's was kind of cheesy, but I still loved it because that's his OG fatality. Like, he punches a hole in your chest, pulls your heart out, and it keeps beating outside of your body. Liu Kang's fatality was great. Sonya Blade with like the pink lasers, like that was kind of out of nowhere. I don't have anything bad to say about it, but I thought that her fatality or her power was very like just a plot device. She got it very last minute. She beat Kano, and then all of a sudden she has it, and she automatically knows how to use it. Like she automatically has found that thing within her which releases it. Jax's arms growing into bigger cybernetic arms was his power set. Like that doesn't really make sense. But again, like this is one of those movies where you have to just turn your brain off for for whatever, an hour and a half, and just enjoy it. And I did. I enjoyed it. All my friends enjoyed it. I hope everyone out there enjoyed it. I know that I've seen some things online, especially from critics, which are really like not being at all kind to this movie, which that's fine. I mean, it's criticism. That's how they make their money. That's their livelihood. Also, they look at movies through a different lens than you and I sometimes look at them. Like I look at movies, especially a movie like this. This is a popcorn movie. Like you can't go in there, thinking that you're going to find the next Daniel Day-Lewis in the cast or that you're going to find the next Meryl Streep in the cast or her acting performance is going to blow people away. And it's like, oh, like these are not method actors. Like these are actors that are doing their parts, that are doing really good parts, doing the best they can with whatever source material. If I have to pick one cast member who's I won't say his acting was bad, but his part was not great, was the guy that unfortunately played Liu Kang. Like Liu Kang, again, I'm going by the video game, but I do have some reference to go from the video game. And I don't remember Liu Kang being so like meek. Like Liu Kang always came across to me as somebody who did have some maybe confidence issues, but knew that he was meant to save the world. Whereas this Liu Kang, he's kind of like very meek. The way that he kind of portrays the character was a little odd to me. Other than him, everyone else I was really happy with. Everyone else I had a good time with. I can see why some of the critics are really hard on this movie, but I can also see why a lot of the fans are really excited about this movie. Like here's a quick little snapshot. 55% on a tomato meter for critics means 1 out of every 2 critics liked it and 1 out of every 2 critics disliked it. It's a split, 50-50. 87% of the audience score is very telling. To me, when you have 87%, that's almost 90%. That's 9 out of 10 people that went to see the movie enjoyed the movie. And I find myself definitely in that 9 out of the 10 people. I definitely enjoyed the movie more than I didn't enjoy the movie. But that's a very telling score. That's a very telling score to have a score that high. All in all, like I said, I hope that everybody enjoyed it. I hope that you got out to the movie theaters to watch it. I actually did go to see it for a second time in the movie theaters near here, and I can honestly tell you, every theater was packed. I went to an AMC 30, and of the 30 theaters, I believe 20 were playing Mortal Kombat, and of course, with social distancing and so forth, they only had like 40% capacity, or like, I don't know, if like 35% capacity. I know that no one sat within 6 feet of myself and the person that went with me. And that was the same case throughout the whole theater. But all 20 theaters were sold out. And all the times for Friday night were all sold out. Even the late showings were sold out. So that's really great to see. And when the theater box office came in on Monday, and I noticed that this movie has already made just about $50 million, or just now over $50 million in its opening weekend. It made a big haul on its opening night. This bodes really well, because I think even outside of a pandemic, that seems like a normal number for this movie to see, to have hit. I really think that even if we weren't in a pandemic, I think this movie, if it opened to between 50 and $60 million in just regular times, I think the people that made this movie would be super happy. And if this movie follows the arc of what most movies do nowadays, like they're very front end loaded. So the first weekend, they get like their maximum viewing. Sometimes they have a small dip. Sometimes they have a big dip, depending on how big the peak is in the first week. So like a movie like Avengers Endgame, for instance, it had like a $300 million opening weekend. And then the second weekend, it dropped down to like $180 million. That's almost a 50% drop. But if you think about the fact that it had a $300 million opening weekend, like it's expected to have a drop. This movie had a $50 million opening weekend, which is kind of what I expected it to do. It's going to be interesting next weekend how big a drop it has, because if it sticks with the program where most big openings drop by like 30 to 50%, if next weekend it comes in and it makes about $25 million, then it's well on its way to making $100 million, which is great, which is a great haul for this movie. I think the break even for this movie is probably about 90 million. So it's already well beyond halfway to making breaking even. So it bodes well for them possibly doing more. And if you take into consideration that it was also on HBO Max, and I think HBO Max definitely took some viewership away from it, I think all in all, this movie shows that you can make a lower budget, Mortal Kombat film, keep the budget in line so that the studios can make some profitability, but also be able to continue to make content in the Mortal Kombat realm. The problem is when a movie starts at 50 million and the budget was set at like 30 million, obviously they have to make 90 million to really break even because of the splits between the movie theater and marketing and so forth. The problem starts to happen when the company that made the first movie for 30 million comes back and says, hey, the next movie needs to be 70 million, because now the other bar moves up. And we can tell by this that there is excitement for this movie. We are in a pandemic, but I think even in a best case scenario, this movie might have made like 75 million bucks in an opening weekend. Overall, I think this movie probably would have made about 150 to 200 million dollars in a non-pandemic era in box office. So as long as they keep the budget down, I think they can keep making these movies. And if they keep making them at this quality, which is a really good quality, I think that there's definitely a future in this franchise. I would love to see a spin-off movie, a prequel movie specifically about Sub-Zero and Scorpion. I think a movie set in that era of ancient Japan and ancient China and the fights that they had. I've always loved movies like that. I love The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise. I've loved a lot of the older, the 47 Ronins and so forth. Like all those old Japanese movies are awesome. So I hope there's a spinoff. I know that one of the characters has like a 4 or 5 picture deal. So the character is definitely going to come back. That's Sub-Zero. He died at the end of the movie. This is a spoiler-rific review, so there you go. So the other thing I want to do with today's video is I also want to go over a couple of questions that people sent in that I'm super happy they sent in. I had a lot of comments in my last video. Again, please comment, like, subscribe, and send in your questions. You can email me questions at lewis@lewisortega.com. It's in the video information below. And let me just answer. There's only 3 that I can answer today, but I'd like to answer these. The first question comes from Dennis. And Dennis says, I enjoy your review of Mortal Kombat. I want to know if you think there will be a sequel, since I heard one of the actors claims to have a 4 picture deal. So yes, I think that if this movie can reach $90 million in the box office, I think that Warner Brothers will look at this movie and understand that it was released during a pandemic and it was released on HBO Max as well as in theaters. And if it can reach $90 million, then I think Warner Brothers would look at it and say, hey, this movie has the potential to do $200 million in box office in a normal time without HBO Max also releasing it at the same time. So I do think there's a sequel in the works. Let's see if it gets greenlight. I do hope that, again, they have some prequel series to expand the mythology, to expand the lore. Like, we don't just need to go down one avenue. There's a lot of characters in Mortal Kombat, and all of them have really interesting stories. I don't want it to become all prequel and no Mortal Kombat. This movie, if you look at the movie, Mortal Kombat actually hasn't started. I think it starts like in a week or a month. All these fights that are actually happening before Mortal Kombat, because Shang Tsung is cheating and taking out the Earth Realm's defenders before Mortal Kombat. So I think in the next movie, we will actually be in Mortal Kombat. Next question comes from Miguel L. What do you think about the next Fast 5 movie? I think it may have jumped the shark. So this is a Mortal Kombat review, but I wanted to answer this one because I am hoping to get an early preview of Mortal Kombat Fast 5. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I'd like to, if possible, review it maybe a week before if I get access to a screener. Right now, I'm on the fence because I feel the same way that Miguel does. I've always enjoyed the Fast and the Furious movies for what they were. They started out as one thing, and they evolved into something else. It's the same way that Mission Impossible started out as one thing, and it evolved to something else. The difference is Mission Impossible, what it started with and what it has evolved to, still is centered around the same idea, and it's still based in the same world. And what I mean by that is they haven't deviated from the physics of the world. The physics of the world in the first movie are still accurate to the physics of the world in the last Mission Impossible movie. If Ethan Hunt falls from a building, he will get hurt. If Ethan Hunt gets into a car accident, he could die. If Ethan Hunt gets shot, he could die. So the physics of the world have not changed. It's just they've changed some of the character points of Mission Impossible to keep the film fresh. Whereas the physics of Fast and the Furious there's no physics anymore. Like, there's no logic. Like in the first Fast and the Furious, we were racing cars, modified street cars. That happens all the time. People got into car accidents. They would come out, they would be scratched and they would be hurt. One of the original cast members of Fast and the Furious in the movie was killed by the rival group. He died. He's dead. In the second Fast and the Furious, very similar. Tokyo Drift. It's still about racing cars and your status as a car racer and everything else. And then at some point they realized that they could only milk street racing for so long. And I think it's right about the time that Vin Diesel actually became a producer on these films. Because on the first couple of films, he wasn't necessarily a producer. And then he became a producer on the films. And when he became a producer on the films, all of a sudden they went from street racing films to action-centric films. And he started writing or having writers write the role of Dom as like a super agent. Whereas if you go back to the first Fast and the Furious, he's just a mechanic. He just works at a garage. Now all of a sudden he's like a super agent. He's like, Ethan Hunt of Fast and the Furious. Actually, he's even better than Ethan Hunt because nobody can beat him. He has written into his contract that he cannot lose a fight. That takes away all reality. This guy can beat everybody. This guy beat The Rock in a 1-to-1 fight. The Rock, who outweighs him easily by 80 pounds, is probably, 6 inches taller than Vin Diesel? So you got a guy that's 6 inches taller than Vin Diesel, outweighs him by 80 pounds, and Vin Diesel and him fought to a stalemate. And neither one of them walked away injured. They flew through walls, they hit each other, not one scratch on either one of them. And this is kind of what started to happen in the last few films. And I understand that they need to make the action bigger and they need to make the set pieces bigger and everything else. But you also have to keep your trajectory of reality in check. If you start doing this with your reality, I can fall off a 1-story building and survive. Okay. I can fall off a 2-story building and survive. I can fall off a 3-story building, get up and start running. I can fall off a 4-story building, get up, fight 50 guys, and I'm going to win. You're losing me. You're losing the reality. The verisimilitude, which is reality, which is the concept of reality, you're losing it. And in the last movie, and if you look, it also shows that the box office on these movies is now heading in the wrong direction. If you look at if you look at all the box office for all the Fast and the Furious movies, the last movie actually made less money than the movie before it. It's the first one to go this way. And I think that this Fast and the Furious is going to continue that trend of going down for two things. One, I really do believe that there are a lot of fans that are kind of stepping off the train because they just, can't buy it anymore. And two, and I hate to say it, The Rock's not in it. The Rock is franchise Viagra. This franchise was doing this, barely making any kind of, every movie was making a little bit more than the one before. However, every movie was costing a little bit more than the one before. It's not until The Rock was added to the cast that the box office numbers went like this. They literally just shot up. The movie before The Rock was introduced and the movie that The Rock was introduced, The Rock's movie almost doubled the amount of money made from the one without The Rock. And now this one doesn't have The Rock. The last one, The Rock wasn't predominantly, he was featured, but he wasn't really featured a lot because they were going to start doing the Hobbs and Shaw spinoff. And the last movie took a dip. And this movie doesn't have The Rock losing verisimilitude, losing all grasp of reality. And, I think there might be some fatigue. And from what I've seen with the last few like commercials, I'm sorry, you cannot swing a Dodge from a vine using the front axle. Dodges are built like shit. Any car, wrap a rope around the axle, the front axle, not even the entire axle, just wrap it around one wheel and speed up to 60 miles an hour. When that rope gets taut, it's going to pull the entire front end of that car out. And here we're expected that he's going to perfectly aim at one rope, that God knows how long that rope's been there, how old it is. He's going to hit the rope. The car's going to fall with the rope just in the right place, wedged in the wheel, and then it's going to impact, pull taut, and swing the car and not rip the entire front end of the car off and kill Dom in the process. I'm sorry. We'll see when it comes out, but as of right now, I'm going to reserve the right to say that I do think the Fast and the Furious might be running out of gas. There you go. That's a good one. From Mary, what is your rating systems for movie? I saw your Mortal Kombat review, and although you recommended it as a movie to see, you didn't give it a rating. On Rotten Tomatoes, the critics certified it unfresh at 55%, while the audience is giving it a generous 87%. What are your thoughts? Okay, so I'm going to probably make another video about this. My rating system is very different than the rating system of, I'm not going to say of other people, but the rating systems in general. I do not like to rate movies 1 to 10, 1 star to 5 star. I don't like to rate movies with a number because the number is always deceiving and the number can always be misinterpreted. So let's say I did a rating system from 1 to 10 and I said a movie's a 7. That means that the movie is better than a 5. So 5 would be the middle, 7 would be almost halfway to a 10. I don't give movies 10s. I would never, in my entire life, I can honestly say maybe there's been 8 movies that I've personally given a 10 to. And the problem with that is even if I give a movie a 10, that doesn't mean you're going to think it's a 10. You might see the same movie I see as a 10, and you might think it's god-awful, or it's boring, or it's too long, or any multitude of things. Because movies are art forms. And like any art, it's a very subjective idea of how you present the score. In baseball is not subjective. Baseball is an objective sport. You get points by every home run. So there's a specific way to gain a point, and there's a specific way to win in baseball. There's a specific way to win in basketball. There's a specific way to win in long distance running. So those are objective sports. There's a definitive way to win those sports. On the other hand, you look at something like figure skating. Figure skating is a subjective sport. Other people have to look at it and they have to decide if what you're doing, what the score is. And if you look at a subjective sport like figure skating, let's say, and they have 5 judges, every judge will have a different score for the same exact thing they saw because they all interpret it slightly different. They all are looking for slightly different things. Sure, they're looking for the technical aspects and they're looking for the presentation and so forth, but it's a subjective thing. Maybe the presentation, which is the outfits that they're wearing, for one person, they're like, wow, that's really cool. But for the other person, I don't understand, those choices make no sense. So it's subjective. And movies are subjective. I don't like to really rate movies because I want people to go and rate it for themselves. Now, if I see that the movie is god-awful, I mean, it is just an atrocity to humankind, I will absolutely tell people this is an atrocity to moviekind. I would not recommend this movie. With that said, there will be one person that will watch that atrocity and be like, oh, you know what? I kind of like this. This is kind of a fun movie. So who am I to give it a score? All I can tell you is I'll recommend movies and I won't recommend movies. And if I have to give a rating system, this is my rating system. And I've used this for a long time with my friends, and they always get a kick out of it. Even if I'm not crazy about a movie, if I enjoy a movie, I will recommend it. Even if it's not the best movie, even if most people would give it a 4, if I find that it's an enjoyable movie, I'll say, look, you should go see it. How vigorously I push that might vary. Like I might tell you, hey, I think you should go see it, versus another movie I'm like, oh man, this is definitely a movie you want to see. And if I don't like a movie, I'll say, I personally didn't like it. I don't think it was as entertaining as I wanted. But again, maybe you should check it out for yourself. If this is a genre that you're into, if this is a character that you like, if this is based on a book that you enjoy, then maybe this is something for you. The other way that I can do it is if I were lying in my deathbed and they told me, hey, you can extend your life by 2 hours, but you have to decide this particular movie will be removed from your consciousness. You would have never seen or heard or anything about this movie. Are you willing to give up the experience of that movie, that 2 hours? Now, I'll tell you for a fact, I know that I've spent thousands of hours watching movies. So if somebody came to me and said, hey, we're going to remove this 3 hours of time you would have never seen, heard of, or you'll only know that there's something missing in your mind. We're going to erase the Shawshank Redemption from your mind. And I'm laying on my deathbed. They're like, we'll give you back 2 hours. You give us back Shawshank Redemption. I will honestly say, you know what? That was 2 hours or 3 hours that I invested that I don't want to give up. I really love that movie. So you know what? I'll pass on the 2 hours. I'm already on my deathbed. Versus if somebody said, hey, Resident Evil 3, if we can erase this movie from your mind, would you take those 2 hours back on your deathbed? We'll extend your life by 2 more hours. I will say erase all of the Resident Evil franchises. Give me 30 minutes and we have a deal, because that's how much that entire franchise sucks. So that's my rating system. It's weird, but it makes sense to me. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in again. I really appreciate all the comments. I really appreciate the emails. Please keep sending them to me. I will see you again soon. I'm going to review a couple of movies that are coming out on Netflix and on Amazon Prime and some other straight-to-streaming videos. I will have a follow-up video on the Falcon and the Winter Soldier season as a whole, and I'm going to be doing some other stuff. But if you have any comments or if you have any ideas, please send them to me. I'll be more than happy to look into them. And as always, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing you again all very, very soon. Have a great day.